We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. Locks of the week, position by position. These are the players that we have to have exposure to in NFL Week 14. Bring it all together at the end as we build an optimal DFS lineup live, or at least we try to. But it wouldn't be at Locks of the Week without my good buddy from The Athletic, from Bets TV. You know him on Twitter, at AllInKid. Jake Seeley and Barkley. How we doing?
Yes. she got involved early this week. She wanted to see what was up. She's not used to the recording at nighttime thing, and she's like, what's going on? And she's also knowing that I'm not going to include Saquon in my locks as much as I would love to. Although It's tasty against the Chargers. But Joe, I'm burying the lead. Do you not see what's behind me?
Oh, I forgot about this. We got to let you do your Minshew lap. You got your Beowulf jersey. I see that. But yeah, I forgot.
Beowulf jersey came back out. I sent Joe Holcomb my revised lineup, and I ran with the Beowulf, and Beowulf paid nicely. I am not going to chant him on your show, but I'm going to celebrate the living hell out of that lineup because I know it smashed because of Beowulf.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of what you needed in tournaments last week. I forgot about that. I knew you were all over it. As soon as he was active, I knew he was going to be your guy.
You were waiting for that text?
I was waiting for it. So that was good. Hopefully we can get more Beowulf here in the future. You never know. That was kind of nice to just get a quarterback that cheap also. So this week is a little bit of a different animal. I think that last week there was a lot of really good running back plays and a lot of things to pay up for. This week is a little bit different. So in terms of quarterback, just starting here, it is one of the cheaper options that we have on the slate. Taysom Hill, 7,700 against the Jets. Banged up finger, but it is the Jets, and he's going to continue to run for 100 yards. Maybe it doesn't matter if he throws, right?
And that's the biggest thing. Like, don't make this too hard. Oh, you and I don't think we've even said it yet this year, but you and I have talked about it a lot. Quarterback's relatively flat. Like, a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't want to go chalk a quarterback. And sometimes, like maybe last week, Minshew might have ended up chalk because of the savings. But unless you get a scenario like that, I mean, we look down here and I'm looking at the price and I'm like, all right, if you want to go Tom Brady and save 600 for Josh Allen, that's not going to make a big enough kick of a difference where you're saying like this, like you don't go for the 600 in savings to diversify or differentiate is the right word to use because it's flat. So what I say is if you're going to look at it, 7,700 for Taysom Hill. Here's all you need to know. Finished as a top 7 quarterback, throwing 4 interceptions, Joe. Like, even with the finger, you don't expect him to throw 4 interceptions every single week. And unlike Cam Newton, he's not going to come out of a game and throw 90 yards and 1 interception and nothing else. So as you mentioned, it's the Jets. They might roll out there and just do the Patriots offense as Taysom Hill is one of the guys running the ball 20 times and not even throw the ball 3 times in that game. So for 7,700, yes, it doesn't come much easier than that. I thought about Dak, but Washington's defense has been very good the past 4 games. This is the same defense that limited Tom Brady. That's all you really need to know. So he was intriguing. Brady versus Allen, I'm not going to get too far away from. The Herbert one, that one, whether or not Mike Williams was close contact, whether or not Keenan Allen plays, you know how I feel about the Giants defense. They give up a lot in front of them, but they don't give up a ton of big plays. And they also held Tom Brady under 20 points. They held Jalen Hurts to that miserable game, and they held Patrick Mahomes to 14. So I'm kind of off on Herbert altogether. I think Hill is just kind of the don't make it too hard play this week.
Yeah, Herbert feels like a little bit of a trap to me. Like if you look around the industry, he's popping a little bit in optimizers, and I think a lot of that might just have to do with like the last few weeks he's looked pretty good. We'll see what happens with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Like it's possible that like these weapons are a little bit depleted because of the COVID stuff. So we'll see, man. I agree with Taysom. I don't think you have to pair him with anyone. You just roll him out there, and then you kind of get mini stacks the rest of the way. I guess it's kind of crazy the way that scoring is because like even last week, like Kyler Murray throws for 2, runs for 2. I think he only threw for like 150 yards, maybe even less, but still was like the top quarterback on the slate by a good chunk on FanDuel. It just goes to show how important those rushing yards are and how important just touchdown volume is across the board. So Taysom should be able to provide that. The interceptions don't really matter a ton. It's going to be ugly, and you're probably not going to want to watch the game if you play him, but definitely think that he's a solid bet. Let's move on to running backs. There's a few more guys to talk about here. Josh Jacobs, 7,100 against Kansas City. Obviously, Kenyon Drake is injured, so we have a little bit more passing upside for Jacobs, who's already been pretty involved in the passing game recently. And then a couple other guys in this range. Like it does seem like there's a couple at least above 7K that are definitely in play. Antonio Gibson back in play at 7,400 versus Dallas. I guess getting a ton of volume. If McKissick is in this game or if he's not in this game, still think that Antonio Gibson is definitely a very solid bet to see a ton of work again. And And then Alvin Kamara, a name that we haven't talked about in quite some time. We don't really get much of a price discount on him, though, if he is available and he is healthy. $9K against the Jets, same kind of thing, right? So there's a lot of guys. You can poke holes in almost any of these running backs this week. So I was actually struggling a little bit personally. It was almost easier to find GPP plays than find guys that were like more of the locks at this position. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna end up having a cheaper wide receiver lineup this week, mostly because, and the thing that it's kind of frustrating at the same time, because I've been on Jacobs for a few weeks now, and I'm kind of frustrated with the Kenyon Drake because I was going to be on Jacobs anyway at this price. And now it feels like the ownership's it's definitely gonna climb. Mostly because on top of it, Jalen Richard's still not even practicing. As of we're doing this on Wednesday night for everybody that doesn't know. So McKissick didn't practice on Wednesday. Jalen Richard didn't practice on Wednesday. But even so, let me put it that way. Even if they both did practice at 74 and 7,100, I'm still starting them because, as you mentioned, Jacobs has already seen the increase. This is the workload we had wanted for Jacobs last year. Remember week 1 of last year was like, oh my God, Josh Jacobs is going to be used in the passing game.
It's happening.
And then that was it. That was it for the rest of the year.
Yep.
And then Antonio Gibson, the big thing why I don't think they're going to get away from him anyway is because they came out of their bye, 4 straight wins, including one against the Buccaneers. And how are they doing it? They're just leaning, like almost literally, they're leaning on Antonio Gibson. So it's the workload in both of these, and neither one of them has a matchup that you're that scared of. The Alvin Kamara one, I was not going to be on because of Taysom Hill, but now that Mark Ingram is out this week, because again, COVID is what we're dealing with this year again. But at that price at 9,000, although it's gonna come down to, I wasn't even gonna include Austin Eckler either, so it's gonna come down. I'm interested to see once we build my team, Austin Eckler against the Giants. And then I talked about Barkley at the top. What do you do against the Giants? You run, pass catching running backs. Again, they keep everything in front of them. But what do you do even more against the Chargers? You run. So that's where the Barkley play comes in. But if I'm picking one of the two, whether or not, I got to tell you, Joe, even if Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are both playing, I still like Austin Eckler in this game.
Yeah, I do
actually
too.
like him more because I think less people will be on him.
Yeah, I still feel like regardless of the amount of touchdowns he's been scoring and the volume kind of being split down the middle, so he is getting like some work through the air and just like that. If you tell me that you're going to get 20 touches and you're going to get 10 of them through the air versus like a running back that's going to get 18 on the ground and 2 targets, I'm going to take the guy that's going to get the usage through the air every single time. And that's pretty much what Austin Eckler has been giving us. Josh Jacobs actually is the 3rd highest guy in the Sims. If we run this slate 10,000 times, 21% of the optimal lineups do have Josh Jacobs in it. Austin Eckler, not too far behind. I mean, a lot of these guys we talked about, Gibson's right there at above 13%. So it does seem like a week where spending up at running back makes a ton of sense. Anything else on these guys? I think that this is like a really solid core if you didn't want to go all the way up to Eckler for sure.
Yeah, I think that's where they're going to be hitting is these 7Ks. I have a feeling, obviously, the one that we didn't talk about that's going to be, I'm sure at least one of your guests is going to be talking about, if there is no Elijah Mitchell, the JaMychal Hasty play. I think that this is one of those few times, it doesn't happen a lot, but this feels like the free square to avoid. Like this, and not because it's definitely not going to work. Like it could, but JaMychal Hasty's not a 20-touch running back. And if everybody goes to him, as we talked about for the Thanksgiving slate, when we came off of David Montgomery and went to Jacobs, if you come off for 4 o'clocks and you don't pay for Hasty and you instead position yourself for the 4 o'clock games and more of the expensive running backs, possibly like Fournette, or, depending on if Melvin Gordon plays or doesn't, Austin Eckler. So if you're looking at the expensive running backs at the 4 p.m. instead of the expensive wide receivers, because that's where everybody else is going to be, and Hasty doesn't hit, you're basically, that's people know how DFS works. You won, basically.
Yeah. No doubt. By the way, I wanted to make sure that everyone knew you can rate and review this podcast at ratethispodcast.com/The Joe Holka Show. It's very easy, a little bit more simple than the process was before. So if you can take a second and do that, I would really appreciate it. Wide receiver locks of the week. We're going to start with Julio Jones. He's 6,500 against Jacksonville if he plays. And we also have a couple familiar faces in here. Terry McLaurin is 7,100 against Dallas. And then Jarvis Landry gets severely underpriced at 6,400 against Baltimore. So start wherever you want, Jake. You're basically the host on this show anyway.
Let's start with Landry. What are we doing at 6,400 for Baltimore? So
Right.
a couple factors here, Joe. If everybody has already forgotten, just 2 weeks ago, Jarvis Landry just put up 111 yards on Baltimore, who, similar to the Giants, they kind of funnel their passing, the opposing passing games in front of them or over the middle of the field and into the intermediate routes. And that's why Jarvis Landry did that against them, because Humphrey is really good, who they just lost. And they just lost somebody. They did not play overtime. Harbaugh did not want to go in over because they didn't have corners. They were going to ask people to play at a position if they went to overtime. Now, obviously, they'll have corners, but they're not anybody that's worth being worried about. So you tell me Jarvis Landry at 6,400. Again, you mentioned it when you said the misprice is just, this is easy. This is an easy smash for me. This is one of the biggest locks. I immediately looked for Landry.
That's one of the ones that Reeves brought up immediately also. Yeah.
Did he bring up Julio?
We've not talked about Julio yet, so I'm curious your thoughts on him.
It's honestly this simple. If he's out there, volume. Like, I know Julio. Look, this is the Cam Newton, but not Cam Newton getting hurt. But this is the Julio Jones, the injury. Like, he goes out there, gets hurt in the first quarter, you never see him again.
Sure.
You understand the downside of Julio Jones, but you also understand the upside. And who is Julio Jones facing this week? Jacksonville, which not the worst defense in the world, as people have thought, but it's still very exploitable. And Tennessee needs to pass to get some type of semblance back to this offense. Tannehill needs somebody to throw to. They just lost a game where they ran the ball 8 billion times. So they need Julio. They need Julio out there because Nick Westbrook-Akina is not a number one. Des Fitzpatrick is not a number one, but Julio Jones is. And honestly, Joe, maybe it's partly sentimental. It would feel like I just would feel great seeing 120 yards and a touchdown from Julio Jones in my lineup, just because I want to see Julio do it.
Yep, that would be nice. I'm with you. Terry McLaurin, tough matchup against Dallas. Yeah, so I mean, tough matchup.
He's been inconsistent.
He has. I think I can't remember exactly who brought this up, but it feels like Terry has been fine unless he scores a touchdown, right? So he's great if he scores a touchdown. If he doesn't really come near that price tag very often.
No, and that's the biggest thing is, and if you look at it too, he's done well against some teams where you would think, no, you should not. Like, I mean, go through the game log here real quick. Las Vegas is good, not great, but Seattle, 7. But Carolina's got a great secondary, 18.8. Green Bay, good secondary, even with or without Jair Alexander. I don't think that was with Alexander at the time, but still 21.7. And then the Giants, the second game of the season, as I keep mentioning on the show, how good the Giants secondary is 22.2s. That's what we're chasing here. We're chasing a little bit of the 20-point game here. There's no Logan Thomas. Ricky Seals-Jones might be back. Dallas does have a good secondary, but it's a turnover. If you look at fantasy-wise for their defense, it's a turnover-aggressive defense. We've seen it as many times. I mean, you just basically throw that way, and it's a touchdown either way. Either they're intercepting it for a touchdown, or the player gets behind it because they're so aggressive. So that's what we're going for ceiling-wise, and it comes down to also, I feel better about it because he's 7,100. You know, if it was 8,100, 7,800, around that price range. But Dallas is still extremely susceptible to some big plays, and I think this is one of those weeks, if you look at it with Heineke and this team, yes, they're leaning on Antonio Gibson. If I chose one or the other, it is Antonio Gibson. But if you don't want Gibson and you went a different route at running back, I still, as strangely as it is, because I think most people would be like, I want a piece of the Cowboys offense. I want a piece of the Washington offense. I want Gibson or McLaurin this week. I want one of those two pieces this week.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting route because I do think that it's definitely going to be Gibson that people kind of gravitate towards. So I was kind of thinking as like a little bit of a leverage play, but like again, there's really not a lot to pay up for at wide receiver unless you're going all the way to the top for Tyreek Hill. So I think that the McLaurin thing, especially if we don't get Keenan Allen or Mike Williams or both, like that's going to be a range of wide receiver that ends up being kind of a dead zone unless you want to go to one of the Dallas guys. CeeDee Lamb is right around there also. So let's move on to tight end. This one's pretty simple because whoever is the tight end for the Las Vegas Raiders is going to be your lock of the week. So Darren Waller is 6,600. Foster Moreau, last week's chalk, Foster Moreau, 5,200 against Kansas City. Pretty good spot. I mean, there's going to be some passing on both sides, and realistically, like this is kind of where you want to beat KC is like the middle of the field, short to intermediate, right?
This is really what you want to do. The biggest thing is Foster Moreau, from a snaps standpoint, the process was right last week. I don't think anybody out there, myself included, but even people covering this team, did not expect them to be blocking as much as he did. Over half of his snaps were not routes run. That's all you need to know. And that was the concerning thing. And that kind of goes back to the defense has been playing better than people have thought. Kansas City, their defense has been playing better than people have expected of late, but it's still not the same level. And this is a game that they will need to pass more, that being the Raiders. So I don't mind in a situation like this doing running back and a tight end because, running back, wide receiver, maybe depending, if it's Alexander Madison and Justin Jefferson, of course, no problem doing that. Yeah. But this is one where, I think if you can get up to Waller and then if not Moreau, I will give you an alternative if you want to go down.
Sure.
I'm going to go back to Cleveland. A couple reasons. It's not even just because of the secondary. Let's even say their secondary is healthy, Joe. Mm-hmm. You know this. I've been telling you this for the entire year. If people listened to us last year, they would know this. Tight ends versus cover 2 are how you find matchup issues. Cover 2, like Houston, Baltimore, like all these teams, that's a very exploitable range. And not only that, Austin Hooper generally is a concern because they don't pass a ton, but also there's multiple tight ends involved. Harrison Bryant's not practicing,
right?
And David Njoku's out. You're down to Austin Hooper for 5,000. So if you want to go down, Austin Hooper is your play.
Yeah, easy game with that one. I'm not sure exactly when we're going to get the final call and the final news on Waller, so definitely totally comfortable going with Hooper, especially at that price. We're paying all the way down for Hooper. I think in the mid-range, maybe Dalton Schultz is probably okay, but he's like the high 5Ks, and then if you're going all the way up, there's a ton of different options there. So let's go ahead and actually, before we build a lineup, going to bug you guys one last time to subscribe to the new YouTube channel, the second YouTube channel. There's going to be a bunch of exclusive clips, picks, all that kind of stuff over there. Don't want you guys to miss anything. There is a link in the description. Check out the pinned comment below, and it would really help me out. It's not easy to build something like this at the beginning or in the middle of the season, I should say. So let's go ahead and build a team here, Jake. It is early in the week, of course. The Listener League, FanDuel.com/Holka to get in there. Who would we like to put in here first? Because you go about this a little bit differently. You jam in the best plays, and then we figure it out from there. So who are the best plays?
Go backwards from there.
We could.
You know what? I'm going to do it a little differently than it sounded like. We're going to start with Taysom Hill because I don't ever usually start with quarterback.
Okay.
And then we're definitively 1,000% getting Jacobs and Landry in there. And we'll get those 3 in and then start going from there.
Okay. So we got Jacobs. We got Landry. I'll say the player that we've been putting into lineups at defense, at least, or the defense that we've been putting in has been mostly Kansas City, just because they're 3,700. There's not a lot of cheap options that are great. Jacksonville against Tennessee is okay, but where are we paying up then? If we're paying up, because that's definitely the route.
You know what? This is this is something I've never done.
Okay.
I'm gonna put in a 4 o'clock. I'm gonna put in my flex right now for now because he's the 4 o'clock option.
Sure.
We're going to, and you know that I'm with you. You don't have to correlate the running back and defense.
Right.
However, Eckler and the Chargers against the Giants with Mike Glennon or Jake Fromm, whoever it might be. Yeah, let's put Eckler because we want him in the flex because he's 4 o'clock.
Yep.
And the Chargers for the defense. I will pay up for that Chargers. I actually don't mind the Kansas City play, but of course I already put Jacobs in there.
You already have Jacobs in there. Yeah.
I don't want to do a Jacobs Kansas City situation.
Okay.
So what does that kind of put us at?
So we're okay on price right now. We got 6,300 the rest of the way. We could put Hooper in as like a placeholder to see where that gets
put
us.
Hooper in.
He's 5K. So 6,700 now. So you definitely can pay up at least one more of these slots, I would imagine. So 2 wide receivers and a running back.
Let's say, you know who we didn't talk about that I still like? It doesn't. Well, of course this will change, and I'll have to text you, although you'll be traveling. Put in Ayuk, assuming Debo doesn't come back. I just don't know why they would play Debo. That's a pretty severe, not severe, but severe-ish injury that you don't want to aggravate 1 week later.
Yeah, groin. Like that's something that could easily he could go out there for one snap and be like, all right, I'm done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 3 to 4 weeks is like a groin, and then on the good side it's 2, and it hasn't even been 2 yet.
Right. Yeah. I'm with you.
So Ayuk is 64. You know what? I didn't talk about this running back because I don't think he's a lock, and that's why. But to come off of Antonio Gibson and drop down to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and that's another one. I don't usually go running back versus running back, as you well know. A lot of people don't. But the Las Vegas run defense. This is one of the you know that I've been attacking it. I think I just said you know this for like the 5th time in the show. I don't know why. That's my catchphrase of the week.
Yeah.
But attack this Raiders run defense. All I have to say is a few weeks ago, Devontae Booker ran ham on them. So attack their, and what does that lead? And that's why I wanted to do it. And I wanted to get off Gibson to see what this does for me.
Yeah, so that gets you all the way to 7,400. So you can probably, I mean, you could play Antonio Gibson. At that point, we would just have to move. Or that's too many running backs. Actually, you cannot. I take that back. You got to get to Evans, Metcalf. That's still a really nice range, though, wide receiver.
Oh, you just said it.
Jamar Chase, mini stack, if you wanted to do that.
No, I think people are going to just see Bills defense. Not remember Tre'Davious White's out. Not remembering like everybody's going to have fresh in their minds that miserable game that we just saw. Which
who's going to cover this big body of Mike Evans on the Bills?
Mike Evans.
Yeah.
Still no Antonio Brown. Put Mike Evans in this